there's a saying that I love in social media, and that it's, if you have more brains than money, do your own social media. If you have more money than brains, then hire somebody else to do it. And so that's what I do. People who don't have the time to fool with it, but they have the money, they hire our firm to, provide public relations, marketing, advertising, consulting, community outreach, and social media. And that's where I come in. I'm on the digital side of things, so anything having to do with websites, online ads, Facebook, Twitter, Pinterest, anything like that, blogger outreach programs is pretty much my territory. So this is just a little overview of what we're going to talk about. This is just a basic prezi, but this is pretty much what my desk looks like on a daily basis, so it fit perfectly. Just to tell you a little bit more about my background and how I got started in the world of social media. My major in college was theater, and I minored in communication studies. And so, and I went to college pretty much the same time as Mark Zuckerberg, so this wasn't really a thing yet. I started using Facebook when you had to have a .edu email address to use Facebook. So just kind of been using it since it's been there, and didn't really think it would be a career one day. From my theater major, I went on into teaching, and I spent 4 years teaching middle school drama and English and speech and debate and whatever else they needed me to teach. I started teaching. And it was during one of our conferences, our teacher conferences, that the idea of incorporating social media into education kind of was brought up, and it really intrigued me because I had only used it for personal reasons. I never used it for business or group projects or anything like that, so it was really kind of neat. And so I started incorporating that into my classrooms, and of course middle school kids just thought it was the best thing ever. They got so excited. I was teaching the book The Outsiders. I don't know if you guys ever read The Outsiders, but I had my students make Facebook accounts like the characters in The Outsiders. So there was like a Pony Boy account, and then they had to update their status as we were reading through the book. And it was just so much fun. It was a great experiment, and they had a really good time doing it. And as I was teaching, I thought, why not just do more of this? This is what I want to do. This is what I enjoy. I kind of had a knack for it, for all this digital stuff. And so I left teaching, and I started working for a publication here in Birmingham, selling advertising, and just kind of happened to be the youngest person in the office at the time. And so the publisher said, hey, why don't you just do our Facebook? Can you figure out this Twitter thing? And then they said, I'll start paying you to do that. So I was like, whoa, people get paid to do this kind of stuff? Like, that's awesome, that rocks. And so I started managing the social media for this publication, and in about 6 months' time, I grew their following by 60%. Now that little statistic helped me get the job I have now, which I started out as PR and social media coordinator for this firm. This woman, Krista Conlin, broke away from another PR agency here in town, wanted to start her own thing, and needed somebody who knew how to do social media for her clients. I started out with just 2 accounts, and just talking with her, giving her that statistic of how I grew the numbers, she hired me right off, and I started managing these accounts for her. One account was a Mexican restaurant, and one account was a wealth management firm. So very much opposite ends of the spectrum, but it was fun, and it was a really good exercise in me learning how to do, different kinds of personalities online, because that's pretty much what I do. After that, I became the digital PR coordinator. That's my, promotion that happened a few months ago. And pretty much the reason why that promotion happened and why I had the title change was because a large part of what I do is client education. Now I manage about 20 different accounts online, and it was important for my clients to realize that I don't just play on Facebook all day, that there really is more to it than what they realize. And so my title is, all things digital, everything from website, blogs, all of that falls under my territory. So this is me, kind of cut off a little bit, but I'm the digital PR coordinator. Tells you a little bit about my background, and yes, I do consider myself to be a social media expert. There's kind of a debate right now in social media as to whether there can actually be a social media expert, because it's something that's always changing and always evolving, and there's always something new to learn. But yeah, I do consider myself to be an expert. I'm active on all of the sites, the big sites that you can really be active on. I know what I'm doing, and it's important for me to have that expertise so that my clients trust what I'm doing. So these are all the outlets that I'm on right now that you can find me: Pinterest, Google+, LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, half of Instagram. Pinterest, I'm not really the artsy craftsy type. You're not going to find any like mason jars and really awesome recipes on my Pinterest. I wanted to find a way to really make that me and what I was about. So what you're going to see is really awesome social media articles that I've found, and you're going to see samples of client work that I've done. One of my Pinterest boards, social media projects that I worked on, links to my LinkedIn profile, so that anybody who's checking out my professional resume can go to my Pinterest and see all of the different projects. Google+, I don't really use that much because it's not really relevant for this market yet. It will be one day, but just not yet. LinkedIn, I'm on it. Feel free to connect if you're also on LinkedIn. Twitter, we're going to talk about Twitter in just a second. Facebook, I really only reserve it for personal use, but I manage a lot of brand pages on Facebook, and then Instagram. If you follow me on Instagram, you'll see a lot of shots from Birmingham Fashion Week, which is going on right now. I Instagrammed my really awesome all-access backstage pass last night, and it blew up because everybody thought it was so cool. So Instagram, you'll see just a little bit of everything that I do. Alright, so you've all been instructed to have your Twitter accounts up, correct? Up and running? Should be logged into your Twitter?
No.
Go ahead and do that if you're not already on it.
The Google community, guys.
You were up late putting stuff on our wall.
Uh-oh. Log into your Twitter.
12:05.
Thinking about you guys.
And feel free to use it on your laptop. If you want to use it just on your phone, that's fine. I'm from the school of thought that it's perfectly acceptable to have your devices out when someone's talking, because that's kind of how we watch things now, and that's kind of how we listen to things now, is we have our phones out as kind of a second stream. So that's perfectly fine. One of the things that you're going to be doing today is, as I go through a lot of different topics involving social media and what's hot for 2013, I would like for you to live tweet this presentation, which means anything that sticks out to you, any phrases that I use or terms that I use, feel free to tweet those out. You can tag me in the tweet. I'm just at Maree Jones. But also any questions that you have, tweet them to me, and then at the end of the class I'm going to pull up my Twitter feed and respond to any questions that you have. So if you wanted to go ahead and connect with me, it's just at Maree Jones.
Do you want to use any kind of hashtag?
I'm going to show hashtag just one.
I'm following here.
And so live tweeting things, whether it's just, a presentation or a panel, or if it's a huge event like Birmingham Fashion Week has kind of become the norm. Last year we kind of experimented with Birmingham Fashion Week and live tweets, and what we found is that one night we live tweeted just some really awesome shots of the fashion on the runway, the models twirling, and that in turn helped attendance for the next night. And we did it that next night, it helped the attendance for the last night. So I'm fully anticipating Saturday night's Fashion Week show to be completely sold out based on the word of mouth, the tweets, the social media, everything that's gone on this week, because it kind of builds that following for you. So live tweeting is a very valuable skill to have in the world of social media. So if there's anything interesting or any questions that you have, tweet those out. Alright, let's kind of talk about what we already know about social media. First thing, it works. Social media is something that is incredibly valuable for businesses because we know at this point it can lead to increased sales and revenue for a company. We know that word of mouth is one of the most trusted forms of advertising, and that social media is just an extension of that word of mouth. It works. If you take a look at, some of the world's Fortune 500 companies, Starbucks, Nike, Coca-Cola, Macy's, Amazon, Estee Lauder, all of those brands have invested a lot of time and a lot of money into solidifying their social media presence. And they wouldn't do that if it wasn't worthwhile. And so if they're all doing it, it makes sense for maybe us to do it on a personal level, and it makes sense for small businesses, entrepreneurs to do it as well. The second thing we know about social media is that it's important. The Oscars generated over 2 million tweets. The Super Bowl generated 24.1 million tweets. Which one do you think was deemed a more successful live event? Super Bowl, yeah. I mean, the power outage certainly helped with all those tweets, but nowadays the success of a lot of our, national televised events depends on how many tweets per minute or tweets per hour it generates. Like, those are the new ratings that television stations use. We've had the privilege of working with some reality stars and reality shows at my firm, and I mean, the thing that the studios and the stations and TV channels, thing that they will all say is that while the show is airing, those stars, they have to be on Twitter, they have to be on Facebook, because they need to generate those ratings, they need to generate that word of mouth. It's very important. The third thing that we know about social media is that it requires some type of strategy. You can't just set up a page and expect it to just blow up overnight. It's not something that you can just, put out there and expect it to work on its own. It's something that you have to work in order to make it work for you. It's something that you have to put some thought into and that you have to build. And it's not something that just anybody can do. Time and time again we see, we have a doctor client as an example, and he hired just 18-year-old receptionist, didn't have much social media experience, but she was young, and so he just put her in charge of his Facebook page. And he wondered why his page wasn't doing any better or getting more likes, because the expertise wasn't there, and it was a direct reflection of his practice. And so that's where we stepped in and, kind of made it what it needed to be. So it's not something anybody can just pick up and do. It's something that requires some training, requires some thought. You have to spend some time working it. One interesting fact that I looked up this week in preparation was that the eBay social media manager can make upwards of $100K a year salary. Granted, that's a huge brand, and not just anybody can waltz in there and take that job, but if these 3 things weren't the case, then that job wouldn't pay that much money. And so there are, really viable, successful careers that can be had in the world of social media, because it's something that works, it's something that's important, and it's something that requires, you've got to be a thought leader, you've got to be creative, you've got to be able to provide strategy. So, where do we go from here? There are going to be 4 big things to kind of think about in 2013. I had the privilege of attending a huge social media conference in Atlanta a few weeks ago, and people from all over the country were there, people who had my exact job, and it was so refreshing just to be in an environment where we all knew the kind of language one another was speaking. You don't get that very often in social media. And so we talked about these 4 topics. These are going to be the buzzwords for social media, for digital, in 2013. Innovation, or the ability to innovate. Influence. Mobile, everything is going mobile. And listening. And I love memes. You guys are into internet memes. I love them. And so I've got some to kind of illustrate my point. Alright, so the first thing, innovation. The last thing that this world needs right now is more Harlem Shake videos.
Rosie, why don't you tell her about your Harlem Shake?
We did it on the last possible day, that's all I have to say. USGA came to me and they said, we want to do a Harlem Shake. I said, it's too late. I said, it's like 5 days old, it is too late.
The minute the Today Show did a Harlem Shake is over, it's done,
That's right.
No more. The minute something becomes like really mainstream, it's not innovative anymore, it's not original anymore. So no more Harlem Shakes at this point. If I had given this presentation this time last year, I would have said no more Gangnam Style videos. Because it's do y'all know what that is? Yeah. Just no more of that. Don't copy what somebody else has already done. Figure out the next big thing. This is easier said than done. But you're going to have to figure out a way to make something your own. It's one of the reasons why I love memes, because I think they're kind of timeless. They don't get old. Wonka is kind of fading out a little bit as a popular meme, just because he's everywhere. But I do love the sarcastic Wonka. If you're working for a smaller company, or if you're working for yourself as an entrepreneur or just your personal brand, it's a lot easier to be innovative and to come up with original ideas. Something that is very difficult is when we're working with a huge brand or a huge organization that's been around for a while, they're a lot slower to innovate because everybody has to have approval on every little thing, and it's difficult to let them, kind of step out of their comfort zones. But if you're working for yourself, it's important to be a thought leader and to be creative and try to figure out what the next thing is. So innovation is very important. At this social media conference I went to, I heard the story of, it was the social media manager for the Fox Theater in Atlanta. They're one of the more, wildly successful venues in that area. And he was talking about, he had a patron come in to see a show one night, and they tweeted from the 4th row, say, "Hey, bring me some wine, I'm thirsty." It was just kind of a sarcastic little tweet. People really didn't think much of it, but sure enough, he went and got him a bottle of wine and brought it to him in the 4th row. I mean, you don't think that just totally generated tons of positive word of mouth for the Fox Theater? That they would be willing to go out of their way for a patron and bring them some wine just based on a tweet? It's that kind of innovation, that kind of outside of the box thinking that can really lead you to be successful in social media. So how do you innovate? First thing is to do something unexpected. Bringing the guy the wine was really unexpected. Another thing is to do the opposite of what everybody else is doing. You know, everybody's might have these awesome couples specials for Valentine's Day. And let's say that you're managing the brand of a restaurant. Why don't you do Single Awareness Day instead? You know, try to think about the opposite. Have an opposite moment. And think about, okay, what is the antithesis of this? And the third way to innovate is to really develop a voice or a character for your brand. This is one of the reasons why, you know, my background in theater is useful to my job in social media, is because I manage, let's say, 20 different client accounts. Each one of them is very different and requires different thought, different strategy, a different personality for each brand. So one minute I'm tweeting as a Mexican restaurant, the next minute as a financial advisor, the next minute as a fashionista, the next minute as a comic book geek. You know, those are the different characters I play in a given day. And so to be innovative, you really have to know your brand enough to kind of develop an online voice for that brand. That's innovative. I love Honey Boo Boo. The next big word is influence for 2013. You see she's saying good content is my go-go juice. It's important for anybody who's wanting to generate some PR for themselves or to kind of grow their brand. They've got to look for the influencers. They've got to look for maybe either the bloggers who are hungry for content, who are writing about the things that they, you know, are talking about in their industry, or maybe it's the people who have 1,000+ followers on Twitter who are tweeting about something that you're interested in. You got to look for those influencers, because those are the people that are going to generate the word of mouth for your brand. For a pizza restaurant client that I had, I still have them. One of the ways that we became very popular on Twitter was because an influential blogger in Birmingham happened to retweet something very, you know, cheeky that I put out there. And from his retweet, we got tons and tons and tons of new followers. You know, it was a little off color, yeah, but it fit their brand. It was funny, it was innovative, and it happened to reach a very influential online voice. And so it's important to look for those people, to try to, you know, pique their interest in some way, and to get them to kind of repurpose your content. So influence is a big keyword in 2013. Mobile. Rest in peace, Steve Jobs. But you see, he's got, you know, the 2012 iBoard. That's like the hugest device you could probably manage. But everything is going mobile. And when we talk about going mobile, raise your hand if you sleep with your phone at arm's length. Okay. We're pretty much reaching people at the most personal level when we go mobile. Pretty much the only time I really check my personal Facebook and Twitter is on one of my devices. And that could be, you know, when I'm sitting with my kid watching Star Wars. It could be, you know, first thing in the morning when I wake up. You're really reaching people at those very personal moments. And so you have to kind of tailor your content to fit that. Mobile kind of goes along with real-time marketing. If any of you watched the Super Bowl during the power outage and saw the infamous Oreo tweet, did you guys see that? You know, when the power went out, Oreo sent out a tweet with a little image that said, "You can still dunk in the dark." And everybody just thought it was the best thing ever. They thought it was so cool. And it went viral because it was that real-time thinking. People were on their phones trying to figure out what was going on with the game. They saw that tweet. They went crazy over it. So when we talk about going mobile, it's really that real-time, that personalization, making it relevant to whatever's going on in people's lives. one of the things that I do in terms of going mobile, because I do manage so many different accounts, just a good rule of thumb, I keep all of my personal stuff separate from all of my business stuff. Because another really good piece of advice I've gotten in social media is that actually comes from the movie Ghostbusters. And has anybody ever seen Ghostbusters? You know, they say don't mix the streams. You never want to mix your personal and your business content. And you want to be very careful that I'm not, you know, saying happy birthday to my best friend through a client account, which has happened before. So you want to make sure that you keep everything separate if you are going to go mobile. Alright, and the next thing is listening. And this all goes back to what's called big data. Are you guys familiar with big data?
We're gonna get there.
Yeah.
We actually had our guest speaker, we had to reschedule, but we're gonna talk Google Analytics in general, so we'll be getting there.
I mean, that's a huge thing for 2013, because you know social media is important. I know social media is important. This helps us prove to the world that it's important, and it helps me to prove to my clients that it's important. So listening to that data is going to be something that really separates the people who just do okay in social media and the people who are rock stars in social media. So you see, you know, I have graphs up here, the pie chart here, favorite colors of 3-year-old girls, pink, almost white pink, and hot pink. You know, there are a lot of programs that you can use to really get amazing data and statistics on your pages. Google Analytics, Facebook, if you manage a brand page, pay attention to the Facebook Insights. And then there's another program I use that I just have fallen in love with, and it's called Simply Measured.com. And it has social media analytics for Facebook, Twitter. They're about to come out with one for Pinterest that I'm super excited about. But it basically takes all of your content and puts it into charts and graphs, because that's something that clients especially really respond to. Especially the people that are in, you know, finance or in the numbers field of any kind. They go crazy over charts and graphs. It's important to read that data so that you can know your audience, so that you can know how effective or ineffective you are, and so that you can kind of tailor your strategy based on that information. So listening to data, big data, is something that's so key in 2013, because now we have it. Now it's been around for a couple of years and we can read the data, and it's, you know, it makes sense now. Alright, so here are some basic tips for maybe doing your own PR through social media. This can apply to your personal brand, if you're branding yourself as an expert on something, if you're an entrepreneur, if you're managing brand pages. These are just really simple, key rules to live by. The first one is to research. There is so much research that goes into creating an overall social media strategy. It's not even funny. I mean, you guys think, I hope you don't think that when you get out of school, researching stuff stops. Because you have to research every little thing in order for, you know, it to really make sense, and in order to create an effective strategy. Because someone may have had the idea that you have before, and if you did your research, you would know that, and you would know to kind of sidestep that landmine there. Or if you did your research on, let's say, the Birmingham market and their social media use. That's very important research, because that can tell you if a Google Plus strategy is going to work or not, or if a Pinterest strategy is going to work or not. One of the great things about, we work with a major shopping retailer in Birmingham, and one of the great things that they do is customer intercept surveys. And anytime somebody gives you a survey, take it because it's good karma.
I totally agree with that.
Yes, always take surveys. So they send out surveys to their customers, and the information that we get from that is such, oh my goodness, it's so good for PR and social media because it tells us, that research tells us that, you know, what we're doing works or doesn't work. And so I love that. The second thing is to rely on competition. And, you know, it's always important to kind of pay attention to what your competition is doing on social media. One of our clients is a major beverage distributor, is the largest one in Alabama, in fact. But there are two other beverage distributors in Alabama who kind of are right on their tails. And so it's important for us to kind of pay attention to what they're doing so that we can always stay one step ahead of the curve. And so it's that reliance on competition. See what they're doing. See what has worked for them and try to make it better and make it your own. See what hasn't worked for them and learn from it. Follow your competition on Twitter and Facebook and like their pages. Because you need to see everything that they're doing. You need to be able to rely on them for information. One piece of advice that I've gotten recently is to hold like monthly meetings with your competitors to talk about what works and what doesn't work. Because let's say that I'm a pizza restaurant and I want to meet with another pizza restaurant and talk about what social media things they've done recently that works. That's good for the whole pizza interest group in Birmingham if we do that. Because we're all going to be putting out information that's beneficial to the audience. We're all going to be creating this really large pizza-loving audience here in Birmingham. And so it's that reliance on competition that's going to be important. The third thing is to develop some kind of plan, schedule, or calendar. Social media is media, and it's important to think like media. Magazines, newspapers, they have an editorial calendar that they use that tells them what to publish and when. I highly suggest you doing the same thing for your social media outlets. Every single week, me and my interns that I have, we will create a day-to-day plan for each of our clients. What's going to go on Facebook, what's going to go on Twitter, who do we need to connect with, and when, and why. We have this laid out, and every Friday we send it to our clients for approval so that we can start posting on Monday. This helps everybody to be on the same page. It helps to build that trust between us and our clients. And it helps to make sure that information that's, you know, not approved or top secret, it helps it to not get out there to where everybody can see it. And make sure everything is open and the communication especially stays open. And it also helps you to, you know, maybe somebody is just on like a Twitter overload and they're getting on your nerves. It's because they really haven't thought this through and they're just kind of, you know, tweeting like someone would just be talking. That can really alienate your followers if you're tweeting or posting too much. But if you have a schedule, if you know what you want to do and when you want to do it, it helps you to really kind of make the most of your following. Tweeting by the rule of thirds. This is one of the things that I really try to do for my personal account as well as my client accounts. A third of my tweets are going to be like just random observations or funny little things that I come up with or thoughts on social media. A third of my tweets are going to be retweets from others because I don't want to put out just my content because I get boring after a while, believe it or not. I want to put out, you know, what other people are saying too. I want to retweet. And then the last third of my tweets are replies or responses to other people because I want to be interactive. I want to be conversational. People who have protected Twitter accounts kind of get on my nerves. Only because it's like going to a dinner party and eating by yourself in the closet. You're on this public forum of real-time news, and it's like, but don't touch me, don't talk to me, I don't want any of it. And it just kind of defeats the purpose of Twitter. So if you have a personal account, like if you have a protected account, evaluate if you think that's the best idea, because I don't. So a third of tweets, original thoughts, a third of my tweets are retweets, and a third of my tweets are replies or responses. The next thing, whether you win or fail at something, develop a case study for it. Let's say I come up with this really cool, well, this spring actually, one of our pizza restaurants is doing an I Love Pizza promotion, in which people are going to just tell us how much they love pizza by submitting a photo or a video or a poem or a short story, and whichever one we think is the best, they're going to get a menu item named after them. I love this promotion, I think it's going to be great, I think it's going to work. Just in case it doesn't, I need to know why. I need to find out what went wrong. But if it's wildly successful, I need to know why too. Because I need to show the client, okay, this happened, this happened, this happened, it was a success. This happened, this happened, this happened. We failed, it wasn't great, but now we know for next time. So whatever promotions you want to do or things that you want to try, develop a case study for it. Really monitor what's going on and why so that you know for the future. And number 6, just these two things just kind of go hand in hand. Don't overlook bloggers and be friends with PR people. Bloggers are great because they're always looking for relevant content. And so one of the things that we try to do with all of our clients is develop a blogger outreach program. So if I'm tweeting about pizza, I want to make sure that I'm following all of the food bloggers in this state because they're influential, they're interested in my topic or my industry, and if they come to my restaurant and try it and love it, that's really good word of mouth. So make sure that you are, finding those bloggers, those people who are, industry specific. And then friends with PR people, just because we know a lot of people and we have our hands in a lot of different things. Like right now, just walking down the street, you wouldn't think, hey, she looks like she's involved in Fashion Week. But I am, and I have an all-access pass, and it's really good to know people who can have all-access passes to things. So being friends with PR people and bloggers, always, always a good idea. Few more tips. And 7 really applies to like Twitter, Instagram. Post what your audience is posting. If you're going to start an Instagram account for one of your clients or for yourself and you're trying to attract more followers, those kind of people that you're interested in, see what kind of photos they're putting out. If it's like cute kitten photos or what they had for lunch, you want to make sure that you kind of post along the same line so that you attract those people. Same thing for Twitter. You want to tweet in kind of the same tone of voice as the people that you want to attract. So you want to make sure that you're posting that kind of information out there. Number 8 is what I like to call a no dead ends approach. Include links on everything. On Facebook posts, tweets, Instagram, Pinterest, whatever you put out. If you're on a website, include a link to something else. If you're doing a blog post. You always want to make sure that your traffic is circulating, that your online traffic that you're generating never comes to a dead end. It's like, okay, where do I go from here? So include links for wherever you want your traffic to go. Number 9, tell stories. Because storytelling is something that's been around since the dawn of time and is not going anywhere anytime soon. And social media is just a different way to tell stories. Before people even started writing things down, they were storytelling. So that's something that if you have that skill, if you can tell really great stories, you're probably going to be really good in social media. And great people, great storytellers are ferocious readers. They read and they consume a lot of content. So are the best writers. The best writers are really great readers. So read a lot, consume as much content as you can so that you can put something worthwhile out there. And number 10, a biggie, maintain it and secure it. Don't just start a Facebook page and only decide you're going to post maybe once a month because your content is stale and old. and your page looks like it's not very well maintained. If you're going to start something, make sure that you can commit to maintaining it. I've had clients who come up with fantastic ideas for blogs, and I go in and I set it up and I put it out there, and they get too busy to write, and they get too busy to provide me with content. And so I pull the plug on the blog because I can't have something that's just kind of done halfway out there. I can't have something with old content out there. I mean, if they can't maintain it, I'm not going to do it. Same thing with security. Make sure that you have access to whatever passwords that you need and that nobody else does. What I was talking about earlier, keeping personal and professional things separate, please do that. During the Super Bowl, there was a commercial for the TV show Two Broke Girls that came on TV, and all of a sudden there was this tweet put out there by this conservative senator guy saying, "Me likey broke girls." And it was quickly taken down, but it was up there long enough for somebody to see it and somebody to retweet it, somebody to take a screenshot of it. And it wasn't this, politician. He didn't tweet it. It was the guy who managed his Twitter page that tweeted it from the wrong account. So you want to make sure that you really try to keep your pages separate and secure, because you don't want, and obviously the guy was fired, and there are so many stories like that, you guys, people tweeting out from the wrong accounts. That's why I would never want to be in charge of the Pope's account. Because I know that I could, accidentally put out, a picture of my son and a giant lightsaber, and, I would quickly get fired. So, I mean, you really have to keep those separate.
Yeah. How do big accounts get like hacked and stuff? Because like about a week ago, I saw that Burger King got hacked and somebody changed everything to McDonald's on their Twitter page. And it was up there for hours and hours and hours, and nobody took it down.
Hilarious. It was so funny.
Yeah, it was so funny.
I loved it.
They were like tweeting that like the Whopper was a fail and they got taken over by McDonald's.
It was hilarious, and the bad thing was I was driving and my phone like started just buzzing, going crazy, and it was everybody saying, "Look at Burger King, look at Burger King." So I had to pull over and check it out, but it can Anonymous is the group that was kind of blamed for that one, and they're just like a group of professional hackers. But it's kind of easy to guess some people's passwords sometimes, because if their dog or the name of their child or...
Well, they tweeted that it was Whopper123, but I don't know if that was true or just another one of their tweets.
Yeah. I mean, because you want passwords that you can remember, so it's going to be something that's familiar to you, but sometimes you've got to be careful in what your passwords are, and change them up every now and then is a good idea too. One of my friends tweeted that every brand page now is going to add the numbers 1, 2, 3, 4 to their passwords right now, when everything was going on with Burger King. Because, I mean, that's an easy way to kind of change it up, add the 1, 2, 3, 4. But yeah, you've just got to be careful. And then when you see something, like if somebody does hack your account, I mean, you got to take care of it immediately and try to put out those fires. That would honestly be like my worst fear to come to life if somebody was to hack one of my friends' accounts. Or if for some reason, you get those DMs that's like, LOL, I can't believe this picture of you. You all know never to click on that link, right?
What?
I'm so afraid one day one of my clients is going to click on that link, and then I'm just going to have to start putting out fires all over the place. So just be very aware and be very careful. And then finally, if you have any questions, comments, if you have any ideas, this is my Twitter handle and email, and you have my cards too, so I'm easily accessible. Before we get into like the Twitter questions, are there any other questions that you have for me that you would like to ask?
great presentation last night.
All right.
Anna, you probably have to.
That's fine. Did I time out?
You may have to timed out.
I just got your meme.
No what?
Your meme.
So Marie, they're going to be doing projects of their own, group projects, and they're picking their topic, and they have to do a social media kind of campaign or strategy for, you know, a local group or community or student group. So they're going to have to show some measured outcomes. And I'm just wondering if you can give an example from based on your experience where you've looked at data and it's informed you about something and how you reacted to data.
Usually before I start any project, I kind of do a comparative analysis on, you know, what the competition's doing. Simply Measured has a fantastic comparative analysis formula that they have, which you can put in like your brand page, what you want to do, and then 2 or 3 others who are doing kind of the same thing. And so you can see starting out how many followers you have versus what they have, what kind of information they put out there. Do they put more photos? How do people respond to those photos? Do they do text only posts? How do people respond? And so that's a really good way to start out something. We just did one of those for the beverage distribution company that we have, and we know that because we're about to do a big rollout of something in the spring, and so we know that right now we have a lot more followers who are a lot more engaged on our site as opposed to the competition. We also know that this week some bad news has come out regarding the competition, which is going to give us a little more advantage. And so knowing that kind of going into something helps you to plan accordingly. Likewise, we did a February promotion recently with our shopping center. But another shopping center in Birmingham did another promotion where they brought in Heisman Trophy winners. And we know that we kind of lost out to that in terms of social media buzz because here in Alabama and Auburn football trump everything. So we know that if we want to generate more buzz, we need to bring the Crystal Trophy to our shopping center, which we're working on now. So finding that data really kind of helps you to have an advantage and to show your client too that, hey, you know, this is working and this is what we can do. So check out those Simply Measured things. Another analysis that you can run is to kind of analyze your Twitter followers so that you can see maybe how many followers you have that have over 1,000 followers. So you see how many influencers are following you. That's another good one. I hope that answers your...
Yeah, it does.
Another thing that might be helpful for them to know regarding their projects is, you know, they've only got between now and early May to work on their projects. And so what might be some realistic goals that they can set for that kind of time period?
Because, I mean, it does take time to build a following, and it does take time to really get information seen and get people buzzing about it. Social media is largely a numbers game, and that the more interactive you are on it, the more that you post, the more that you tweet, the larger your following is going to be. I had a friend I was Skyping with recently, and she was like, you know, I can't get followers. Why am I not getting any followers? And I was like, Erin, you don't follow hardly anybody on Twitter. Why are you going to get more followers and you're not even following anybody else? And so she was like, oh, fine. She went and followed like 500 people at once. Then she got more followers on her account. So the more that you put out there, the more that's going to come back to you. So think about that and kind of develop a strategy. Do you want to put stuff out 2 or 3 times a week? Do you want to try to do something every day? Even on the weekends. Weekends are a big time in social media as well, not just weekdays. Nights are good. Take a look at maybe what time people are talking about certain things and what days people are talking about certain things.
It's interesting to hear you talk about weekends in social media. I just come across a report, and I don't recall where it came from, but they were looking at Twitter and Facebook and looking at the hot spots when you have the highest traffic. So is it true, like the Thursday afternoon is the sweet spot for whatever reason across the country? And then I had all these kind of questions, well, like what about time zones? And then it seemed to indicate that weekends were actually a low time for social media. Just wondering what you know about that.
We have, because we've experimented with like sending out email blasts and different things like that. Like if we send out emails on Saturdays, we found that they're more likely to get read because they're not mixed in with so much junk. Because people get the majority of their emails during work days and weekdays. And so if we send an important email on the weekend, people might be sitting at home, just relaxing, just check their email for the fun of it, come across the email. For social media, we found that weekday mornings are some of the most effective times. But then there's also that afternoon lull between like 2 and 4 where people are just kind of tired at work, they're playing on computer, trying to run out the clock before it's time to go. And so they're on Facebook and Twitter. And so, you know, when I'm working with my interns, I tell them, if you're not in and posting this by, 9:30, don't post it at all until about 4 p.m. Because otherwise it's not going to be, people are busy during the middle of the day. Some of our clients are tweeting now during live events. Like I have a fashion retailer who carries some of the high-end labels. And we've experimented with them tweeting during the Grammys and during the Oscars, and that's blown up. That's been huge. And those are Sunday nights. But those are, they're industry specific, and they're live events. People are already on their phones talking about this. And we just kind of jump in the conversation.
How do you feel about planned tweets versus kind of spontaneous?
I prefer, and this makes me sound so nerdy, but I prefer a more artisanal approach to social media, and that, I don't use like Hootsuite or things like that just to schedule it and blast it out there. I go to each outlet one at a time and post my information. We had a whole plan for the Friday of the Sandy Hook shooting. We had, about 20 different accounts that had information to go out. We decided at the last minute, don't post anything. It's not appropriate today. And a lot of companies were getting in trouble because they had these pre-scheduled tweets. They weren't, constantly managing it. And, people were checking their Twitter stream to find out what was going on with these kids, and they were seeing advertisements and commercials. And it really just turned a lot of people off. So we made the decision to pull all posts and tweets for the day and just go dark. And so that's one thing that you do have to think about when you're developing a strategy is, do you want to pre-schedule? How is that going to be if, something happens, something changes? I don't want to pre-schedule a tweet that says, it's a beautiful day in Birmingham, stop by and get 20% off your order of pizza, and it be like pouring down raining blizzard outside. Because that's going to make me look stupid, it's going to make the client look stupid. So you want to be very careful. And it just goes back to that real time. Whatever's going on. Like, it's a gorgeous day today, but it's a little chilly. Maybe I can incorporate that somehow into my tweet and make it more effective. That's why James Spann is so successful, because he does everything in real time. He has to. But he's wildly successful, and he does a great job. You're going to see more of people like Spann you're going to see more newscasters and people in broadcasting developing approaches like him, because that's really where the future of broadcast journalism is going. You know, news isn't going anywhere. We'll still have news, but the way people follow news is a lot different. I didn't see many questions on my feed. Anybody else have any questions? Yes.
I sent you one. I don't know why it's not showing up. But anyway, I asked if you had any pointers for this upcoming social media project that we're about to do. I don't know if they told you about it.
Just a little bit. What are you doing specifically, you know?
My biggest interest was to work with the Birmingham Civil Rights Institute for their 50 Years Forward campaign that they're doing right now for this year. So.
Okay. And so what do you want to do with that?
What do you mean?
Just get more word of mouth for it, or what are you hoping to achieve?
Well, hopefully I can get an A on the project, first of all.
That's a good goal.
They don't have full details yet. We're going to launch into that next week.
Yeah.
So, but to plug into things that are already happening and see if they can actually elevate an event or get, you know, more attendance, that kind of thing.
Like, I mean, just plugging in here, I'll pull up. I'm not going to do a person search because I know the person, but I'm just going to search everything for 50 Years Forward. And so you see what comes up here in the people, but also pay attention to the tweets. Who else is talking about 50 Years Forward? There are a lot of really influential people right now involved in different aspects of Birmingham. See, you got the Barons right there that came up in all the 50 Years Forward tweets. UAB Arts, Birmingham Public Library, recently voted one of the top 10 libraries to follow on Twitter. I'm happy to be on their junior board. I'm the communications chair for the Young Professionals Junior Board for the library. It's about finding those influencers who are talking about that topic and going directly to them and saying, hey, can you help me spread the word on this? Can you please retweet this? Because, I mean, these people will do it. I know who's behind these accounts, and they're happy to do it. You have to reach people on a especially for a topic like this, you need to reach people on a personal level. It would be important to find those influencers, to go directly to them and ask for their help. Because, I mean, social media people can be some of the most polite, helpful people, and it's because they want help, you know, when they need it. And so it's that whole karma thing. Does that help?
It does.
Okay.
We have a question over here.
Yes.
I was just wondering what advice you would give to somebody who's trying to go into the field of PR or communications, because you said you started in theater and ended up working in PR. So if you could take the shortcut and just start there, how would you?
It's definitely good to get as much experience, whether it's interning or volunteering or being a part of a nonprofit board, as much experience as you can get doing PR related work. One of the things that helped me to get the job that I had, because I didn't come from a PR background, so I was kind of at a disadvantage, but keeping up with statistics for things that I did that worked really well in my past. Like, I grew this following by 60% in my first social media job. By doing that and by showing concrete examples of my work, helped me to say, hey, I know how to do this. It kind of worked as my resume. So any experience that you have, document it. If you pull up my LinkedIn profile, you can see that I've started linking publications where I'm quoted or that I helped to co-author. I put those directly on my LinkedIn profile because it gives me, you know, even more credibility if somebody's, you know, looking at, because, I mean, that's what LinkedIn is your resume. But if somebody's looking me up saying, is this girl legit? Does she know what she's talking about? They can go directly to those examples and see. So finding ways to link to your work, to showcase your work, is important.
Thank you.
All right, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank
Yes.
you.